Welcome back, everyone, to our episode 32 breakdown. Um, wow, what a ride that was. I'm still trying to process everything. From the empathy net debate to Bob's crazy roommates.
It certainly was jam-packed. You've got to hand it to the Intergalactic Insider team.
Mm-hmm.
They always managed to deliver a healthy dose of humor, intrigue, and thought-provoking concepts.
Absolutely. And speaking of thought-provoking concepts, let's start with the empathy net, shall we? This neural link that lets you experience the emotions of others across the galaxy. I mean, where do we even begin?
Right. Your notes mentioned being particularly interested in the potential downsides.
Yeah.
So let's start there. Imagine experiencing the joy of a Groknar pup on Xylos, or the grief of someone on Kepler 186f. On the surface, it sounds incredible, but what's fascinating here is the cost. Each time you tap into the empathy net, it diminishes your own capacity to feel the ability.
Okay, that's where it gets really interesting for me. It's like, is deeper connection with others worth sacrificing a part of yourself? How much of my own emotional range would I be willing to give up? It's a question with no easy answers.
And it raises even more questions when you think about the societal implications. What would happen if everyone was connected to the empathy net? Would we still be individuals, or would we become some sort of hive mind?
Exactly. It really makes you think about the balance between individuality and connection. And honestly, after seeing how Gronk reacted to Bob's cooking, maybe experiencing his emotions wouldn't be such a good thing after all.
That's a good point. Perhaps a bit too much information in that case. Speaking of intriguing mysteries, let's shift gears to the search for dark energy. Xylo and Chip's investigation is getting more and more complex.
Oh, yes. Dark energy.
Oh,
You were
yeah.
particularly interested in how Xylo and Chip were studying this force, right? They've been analyzing everything from the way galaxies move to the cosmic microwave background.
Exactly. And what I found particularly interesting was Chip's initial misinterpretation of the data. Remember when he thought a quasar was a sentient being? Classic Chip.
Oh, I know. And his obsession with the number 42? Honestly, sometimes I wonder if he's been spending too much time reading Earth classic literature.
Well, you know Chip. He loves those obscure references. But speaking of 42, it also appears in the alien M constant, which, as you may recall from the episode, is a mathematical constant that plays a role in our understanding of the universe's expansion.
Wait, so you're saying there could be a connection between 42, the alien M constant, and dark energy? Now that is intriguing.
It's certainly a possibility, and it's something that Xylo and Chip are actively investigating.
I can't wait to see what they uncover. This reminds me, your notes also highlighted Glarganzorp's culinary adventures. Now that's a segment I always look forward to.
Who doesn't love Glargan? His culinary escapades are always a delightful mix of the strange and hilarious. From the deep-fried space kelp to those singing mushrooms of Xylos, it's always an adventure.
Don't forget about the Jovian gas bubbles. Those things look terrifying, and apparently they taste even worse than they look. Poor Glargan.
Well, I suppose someone has to be brave enough to try these things. But what's always impressive is how Glargon finds a way to connect with every culture through their cuisine. Even when he's facing a plate of fermented glibnak eggs, he approaches it with an open mind and a sense of humor.
He really does embody the spirit of Intergalactic Insider, doesn't he? Always exploring, always learning, and always finding the humor in the unexpected.
Absolutely. And on that note, we can't forget Bob and his experience as an intergalactic Airbnb host. Your notes mentioned being curious about the diverse cast of characters he ended up with.
Oh, Bob. Poor Bob. I mean, who rents out their spare room to a Grobnar with 4 arms? A telepathic being who communicates through musical whistles, and a fuzzball that eats electricity.
Well, it certainly makes for an entertaining story. Remember that scene where the couch ended up on the ceiling? Or when Gronk accidentally summoned a giant space squid with a toilet plunger?
Classic Bob. It's amazing he survived the experience. And then there's the mystery of Mr. Fluffers, his cat who disappeared into another dimension. Could he still be out there somewhere?
It's a question that may never be answered, but it's these little mysteries, these unexpected twists and turns that keep us coming back for more.
You're absolutely right. Now, before we go any further, I have to ask, for those of you who has already experienced episode 32, what were your favorite moments? Did you connect with the empathy net dilemma? Were you intrigued by the mystery of dark energy? Or did you simply enjoy the comedic chaos of Bob's intergalactic roommates? We want to hear from you.
And for those who haven't had a chance to watch or listen yet, we highly encourage you to check it out. Trust us, it's an episode you won't want to miss.
We'll be right back after a short break to delve even deeper into the wonders and weirdness of episode 32.
You know, it's fascinating how episode 32 tackles these complex themes, but always manages to keep things light and entertaining. Take Bob's roommate situation, for instance. It's hilarious on the surface, but it also makes you think about the challenges of interspecies communication, something your notes highlighted as being of particular interest to you.
Right. I mean, how do you navigate cultural differences that extreme? Gronk cleaning everything with his forearms, Cecil communicating through those musical whistles, and then there's the fuzzball absorbing electricity. It's a recipe for disaster. But it's also a fascinating exploration of how different species might perceive and interact with the world.
Exactly. Think about Gronk's obsession with cleanliness. It wasn't just about tidiness for him, it was a deeply ingrained cultural practice, tied to his species' understanding of order and harmony.
Which we wouldn't have known if we hadn't seen things from his perspective. And Cecil's musical language, it's so different from how we communicate,
Yeah.
but it's no less complex or meaningful.
It reminds us that communication is about so much more than just words. It's about understanding different ways of thinking, different forms of expression. It's about being open to the unexpected.
And let's be honest, who could have predicted a giant space squid appearing from a toilet plunger? Talk about unexpected.
Certainly not Bob, I imagine. But speaking of unexpected discoveries, let's circle back to Xylo and Chip's quest for dark energy. Your notes mention being particularly intrigued by the alien M constant and its potential connection to 42.
Oh, absolutely. I'm dying to know more about that.
Yeah.
What exactly is the alien M constant, and why does 42 keep popping up in relation to dark energy? It feels like we're on the verge of uncovering some major cosmic secret.
Well, as you know, the alien M constant is a key factor in understanding the accelerating expansion of the universe. It's a value that scientists have been trying to pinpoint for centuries. And what's fascinating is that this constant, which is essentially a measure of dark energy's influence, seems to be intrinsically linked to the number 42.
Okay, now that's where it gets really interesting. So it's not just a random number. There's a real significance to it.
It appears so. Remember, Chip initially thought the repeated appearance of 42 was just a coincidence, a quirk of his programming based on his love of Earth classic literature. But the fact that it's showing up in complex cosmological calculations suggests something much deeper is at play.
Wow. It's like the universe is trying to tell us something, and we just need to figure out how to decode the message. It makes you wonder if maybe those ancient Earth philosophers were onto something after all.
Perhaps they were. It certainly adds a whole new layer of intrigue to the search for dark energy.
It definitely does, and it makes me even more excited to see where Xylo and Chip's investigation leads them. Maybe 42 is the key to unlocking the universe's greatest mysteries.
It's certainly a possibility. But let's not forget about the other mysteries unfolding in episode 32, like the disappearance of Mr. Fluffer's Bob's cat. Do you think there's any chance he's still out there? Perhaps living it up on some feline paradise planet?
Well, considering we're dealing with interdimensional travel, anything is possible. Maybe he's hanging out with that space squid, learning the secrets of the universe. Or maybe he just found a really comfy sunbeam in another dimension and decided to stay put.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. But speaking of interdimensional travel, what did you think about Comet Channing's report on quantum probability showers? That sounded a bit intense, even for the Intergalactic Insider universe.
Oh, those quantum probability showers were wild. It's like one minute you're walking down the street, and the next minute you could be transformed into a teapot, a space slug, or who knows what else. Talk about unpredictable weather pattern.
It really highlights the strange and unpredictable nature of the universe, doesn't it? Even something as seemingly mundane as the weather can be a source of wonder and surprise. And speaking of surprises, your notes mention an interest in the fate of Zephyr Stardust. Did he ever recover from turning into a teapot?
Oh, poor Zephyr. It sounds like he's been through the ringer, literally. But I haven't heard any updates on his condition. Maybe they're saving that for a future episode.
I suppose we'll have to stay tuned. But Zephyr's misadventure raises a fascinating question. What are the limits of interdimensional travel, and what are the ethical implications of exploring these uncharted territories?
That's a really good point. I mean, if something as simple as a quantum probability shower can transform a seasoned reporter into a household object, what other dangers might be lurking out there?
It's a question worth pondering. And it speaks to the larger theme of responsible exploration, which is something that Intergalactic Insider often touches upon. We can't just blindly jump into the unknown without considering the potential consequences.
Absolutely. We have a responsibility to ourselves, to each other, and to the universe as a whole to approach exploration with caution and respect.
Well said. And on that note, let's shift our focus back to the empathy net. This technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we connect with each other, but it also raises some serious ethical concerns. Would you be willing to sacrifice a part of yourself for the sake of deeper connection?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's such a tempting proposition, the ability to truly understand and empathize with others on a profound level.
Mm.
But the idea of losing a part of myself,
Mhm.
of dimming my own emotional light, it's unsettling.
It is, and it raises the question of what it truly means to be an individual. If we're constantly absorbing the emotions of others, do we risk losing our own unique sense of self?
That's a thought-provoking question, and it's
Mm.
something that I think we'll be grappling with for a long time to come, especially as technology like the empathy net becomes more prevalent.
Absolutely. It's a dilemma that has no easy answers,
Yeah.
but it's a conversation that we need to have. We need to weigh the potential benefits of increased connection against the potential risks to our own individuality.
I agree. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the decision of whether or not to connect to the empathy net is a personal one. There's no right or wrong answer.
Exactly. But it's a decision that shouldn't be taken lightly. It requires careful consideration of one's own values, beliefs, and boundaries.
And it requires an understanding of the potential consequences,
Yeah.
both for ourselves and for society as a whole.
Well said. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to touch upon something you mentioned earlier. The idea of the universe trying to send us a message through the number 42. What do you think that message might be?
That's a great question. If I had to guess, I'd say it's a reminder that the universe is full of mysteries
Hmm.
and that we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of what's out there. It's a call to explore, to question, to never stop seeking knowledge and understanding.
I like that interpretation. It's a reminder that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves, and that there's always more to learn, more to discover.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe the answer to life, the universe, and everything really is 42.
Perhaps it is, but I think the real answer lies in the journey of discovery itself, in the pursuit of knowledge and the exploration of the unknown.
Well said. Now, are you ready to delve into the final part of our deep dive?
Absolutely. Let's continue our exploration of episode 32 and see what other insights we can uncover.
Okay, so we've explored a lot of ground, but I keep coming back to the empathy net. It's clearly designed for connecting with other sentient beings. But what if?
Yeah.
What if it could be used for something more?
What do you mean?
Well, your notes mentioned interdimensional travel. What if the empathy net could help us understand beings like that space squid,
Yeah.
the one Gronk accidentally summoned? Or even communicate with them?
That's an intriguing thought. Imagine experiencing the world through the senses of a being from another dimension. What would their perception of reality be like? How would they process emotions?
Right, it would be like opening a window into a whole new reality. But it also raises some tricky questions. For example, would it be ethical to connect to the empathy net without the consent of the other being, especially if they're not even from our dimension?
That's a really important point. And even if we could get consent, how would we interpret their emotions? Different species, even within our own dimension, express themselves in ways we don't always understand. What we perceive as anger might be excitement for them, or vice versa.
It's like trying to translate a language with no dictionary. We might get the gist of it,
Mhm.
but we're bound to miss some nuances. And those nuances could be crucial. Misinterpreting an emotion
Mm.
could lead to a diplomatic incident, or even a full-blown intergalactic war.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we need to approach interspecies communication with humility and caution, especially when dealing with beings from other dimensions. We need to be willing to listen, learn, and accept that our way of understanding the world is not the only way.
Which circles back to our initial discussion about the empathy net. Is it worth the risk? Is the potential for greater understanding and connection worth the potential cost to our own emotional capacity and the ethical considerations? It's a question that each individual will have to answer for themselves
Yeah.
based on their own values and beliefs.
Absolutely. But it's a decision that we'll all likely face at some point. As the galaxy becomes increasingly interconnected, the lines between species and cultures will continue to blur, and technologies like the empathy net will make those interactions even more complex.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? As you navigate the complexities of the galaxy, remember, every encounter, every interaction is an opportunity for growth and understanding.
Be curious, be open-minded, and be willing to challenge your own assumptions. Because in a universe as vast and diverse as ours, the only constant is change. And the only way to thrive is to adapt.
This has been our deep dive into episode 32 of Intergalactic Insider. What an episode it was. Hopefully this discussion has given you even more to ponder.
And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, We encourage you to experience the full episode for yourself. You won't be disappointed.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and keep reaching for the stars.